Before we begin, let the silence settle around you. Not the kind you hear, the kind you feel crawling into the corners of the room. The story I'm about to tell wasn't meant to be spoken out loud. Someone carried it alone for far too long, afraid that saying it would make it real again. If a piece of their truth touches something you've kept buried, you can tell me in the comments. And if these quiet shadows keep pulling you back, you can like the video, subscribe, and tap the bell icon. Now don't move. Some memories wake up when they're listened to. I still don't know whether we went looking for ghosts that night, or if the motel just finally decided to look back. My name's Adil. I'm 24, work a boring warehouse job, and in my free time, I do what most people would call stupid. I go inside places that should have stayed locked up and forgotten. Abandoned hospitals, burned out factories, flooded basements. If it's decaying and has a no trespassing sign, my friends and I have probably been inside it. We never really thought of it as dangerous. Creepy, sure. Gross sometimes, but not dangerous. That changed on Halloween. There were 4 of us that night. Me, my best friend Danish, my cousin Samir, and Hina, who usually stayed behind the camera and made our short urbex videos look way scarier than they really were. We'd been planning a Halloween exploration for weeks, and everyone kept suggesting haunted houses or some cliché cornfield. It was Hina who found the Redwood Pines Motel. "It's perfect," she said, spinning her laptop around. Grainy newspaper scans filled the screen. Closed since 1993 after a string of unexplained incidents. People went missing. One guy supposedly threw himself off the second-floor balcony. No one ever bought the property. It's just sitting there. The photos showed a long, low strip of rooms crouched under a sagging roof, neon sign rusting away in the background. Redwood Pines Motel. The trees behind it loomed thick and dark, like they were leaning in to listen. "Bro, that's actually creepy," Samir muttered, rubbing his neck, like proper cursed. "I'm in." We drove out around 11 p.m., wanting to be inside right at midnight. It was cold enough that the car's heater kept fogging up the windshield. The road got narrower, the streetlights disappeared, and the forest slowly swallowed the sky until it was just a black ceiling overhead. By the time we pulled into the cracked, weed-infested parking lot, the only light left was from our car and the thin slice of moon hanging above the tree line. Redwood Pines was worse in person. The sign was half-eaten by rust, the wood letters missing entirely, so it just read, Red Pines Motel. Windows were boarded up or broken. Doorways gaped like missing teeth. The air smelled like wet wood, old oil, and something else. Something metallic and stale, like dried blood buried under dust. I killed the engine, and the silence dropped over us like a blanket. No highway noise, no crickets, just the ticking of the cooling car and the faint hiss of the wind through the trees. "Recording," Hina said quietly, her voice suddenly small. The red light on her camera blinked to life. "Halloween special. The Redwood Pines Motel. We're here to prove the manager never left." She said it as a joke. It didn't feel like one. We climbed out, backpacks slung over our shoulders, flashlights cutting narrow tunnels through the dark. The gravel crunched under our boots, each step sounding way too loud. The front entrance door was still there, glass long gone, frame warped. Someone had spray-painted a crude smiley face on the wall next to it. Eyes hollow circles, grin too wide. "Okay," Danish said, rolling his shoulders. "Lobby first. Then we sweep left, check out a few rooms, maybe upstairs if it doesn't look like it's gonna collapse on us. Quick and easy." "Quick exploration," I echoed. "In and out." I don't know why I needed to say it. Maybe I wanted the building to hear it too. We stepped through the doorway and into the lobby. The air inside was colder. Not just no heating cold, but deep, bone-level cold. Felt thicker somehow, like it had weight. Our flashlight beams danced over peeling wallpaper, overturned chairs, a reception counter coated in decades of dust. As soon as all 4 of us were fully inside, the lobby bell rang. A single, sharp ding. We all froze. The sound was impossibly clear, cutting through the dead air like it had been polished seconds ago. My flashlight jerked toward the counter. The bell sat there, tarnished and dull, a thin coat of dust on its metal surface. "Did you?" Hina whispered. "No one touched it," Samir muttered. "I swear. I'm not even close." I realized I'd been holding my breath. When I finally inhaled, the air smelled like mildew and something sour, like old sweat trapped in fabric that hadn't moved in years. "Good start," Danish said, trying to laugh, though his voice wavered. "Haunted bell. 10 out of 10 Halloween vibes." We moved closer to the counter, boots leaving trails in the dust. Every step kicked up little gray clouds that shimmered in the flashlight beams before drifting back down. That's when I saw them. "Guys," I said, throat suddenly dry. "Look." Behind the counter, on the floor where no one had walked yet, there was a set of footprints. Not old, scuffed marks. Fresh ones. They were clear where ours were powdery. Dark impressions cutting through the dust like fingers dragged through flour. The prints started near the bell and led toward a half-open door in the back wall. The employee-only area. They were shaped like dress shoes, but wrong. The toe of each print looked flattened, and the edges weren't crisp. In one, the heel mark smeared like whoever made it had dragged their foot. "Maybe someone else was here," Hina whispered. "Like recently. Could be squatters." "Then where are their tracks in the parking lot?" Samir asked. No one answered. We followed the footprints. Of course we did. That's what we do, follow bad decisions into darker rooms. The back office smelled stronger. Old paper, stale cologne, and underneath it all, that metallic note, heavier now, clinging to the back of my tongue. The office itself looked almost frozen in time. A heavy wooden desk sat against the wall, drawers half open. Filing cabinets leaned sideways. On one chair, draped like someone had just stepped out of it and forgotten to take it with them, was a motel uniform. It was faded navy blue with brass buttons, darker patches where sweat might have soaked through over years of use. A tie hung loosely over the collar. On the chest was a name tag crookedly pinned. Manager Frank. The flashlight beams converged on the tag at the same time. My skin prickled under my jacket. "Frank who?" Samir murmured. "Frank Dawson," Hina replied automatically, remembering the articles. "He ran the place when it closed. People blamed him for everything that happened. But the bodies they did find were never normal. Some were half." She cut herself off. Phone rang. The sound exploded in the tiny office, shrill and high, like it was coming from inside my ears. I jumped so hard I nearly dropped my flashlight. On the desk, buried under a yellowed ledger and a stack of sticky notes fused together with age, an old beige office phone vibrated as it rang, cord curling off the edge. "That's not plugged in," Danish whispered. He was right. The cord vanished behind the desk, but from where I stood, I could see the broken outlet hanging loose on the wall. No cover, no wires. The phone rang again. My heart hammered so hard my ribs hurt. The air felt thicker, heavier, pressing on my shoulders like invisible hands. "Don't," Hina breathed as my hand moved toward the receiver on its own. "Adil, don't answer it. But we came here for this, didn't we? For proof. For something we could put into a video and tell ourselves it was all special effects." My fingers closed around the cold plastic. The moment I lifted it to my ear, the ringing stopped. At first there was nothing, just a low hiss of static, like distant waves crashing on a shore. Then, buried inside the static, something moved. A deal. I felt every muscle in my body lock. The voice was low, distorted, but my name was unmistakable. It crawled through the line like a greasy thing. "Adil, are you enjoying your stay?" The room tilted. The pressure in my head spiked. "Who is this?" I croaked, my voice sounding small and thin. Static scraped across my eardrum. Then, the voice again, clearer this time, right against my brain. "Checkout time is over." The line went dead. I don't remember dropping the phone, but I remember the sound it made when it hit the desk. A dull, final thud that echoed way too long. That's when we heard it. From somewhere deeper in the building, beyond the back office, down the employee corridor that led to the staff quarters and storage rooms, came a sound like something heavy being dragged across the floor. Slow, rhythmic, drag, step, drag, step. The instincts in my spine screamed at me to run. The air tasted like pennies, and my skin felt too tight, like it didn't fit right anymore. We all turned toward the doorway at the same time. Our flashlights shook, beams jittering against peeling paint and dark doorways that gaped like open mouths. The dragging grew louder. I could hear wetness in it now, like whatever was moving was soaked in something thick. Each step landed with a sickening, meaty weight. "Back to the lobby," Danish whispered. "Now. We go now." We stumbled out of the office, tripping over each other. The noise followed, closer, filling the corridor just out of sight. My light flickered once, twice, then held. Hina's camera whirred softly behind us, still recording. As we entered the lobby again, something shifted at the edge of my vision. I swung my flashlight toward the hallway just as the sound reached its peak, echoing off the walls. For a split second, just one heartbeat, I saw him, tall, too tall. Shoulders sloped but wrong, like bones had been rearranged underneath the skin. He wore the same faded navy uniform as the one draped over the chair, but this one was torn, soaked dark in places that glistened under our lights. A motel manager badge hung from his chest, twisted sideways, pinned through flesh instead of fabric. His head tilted toward us, just a fraction, and though his eyes were nothing but deep, black hollows, I felt him look straight into me. The smell of rot and cheap aftershave hit me like a wave. My flashlight flickered wildly. "What do you see?" Hina cried. "Adil, what do you see?" Then the light cut out. In the second of pure darkness, the dragging stopped. Silence roared in my ears. When my flashlight snapped back on, the hallway was empty. No uniform, no twisted badge, just dust and peeling paint. "Out!" I rasped. "Out, out, out!" We bolted across the lobby. My chest burned, breath tearing at my throat. As we reached the front desk, the bell rang again. Another sharp ding that sounded right inside my skull. At the exact same moment, every light, our flashlights, the tiny indicator on Hina's camera, flared brighter for half a second, then dimmed. It was like the building was blinking. I didn't look back. None of us did. We tore through the broken doorway, boots skidding on gravel as we sprinted toward the car. The cold night air slammed into my lungs, but I barely felt it. My hands shook so badly I fumbled the keys twice before the engine finally turned over. As we drove away, the motel shrank in the rearview mirror, just a dark shape against darker trees. For a moment, illuminated in the reflection of our taillights, I could have sworn I saw someone standing in the lobby entrance. Tall, still, waiting. No one talked on the ride home. It was only later, back at my apartment, that we convinced ourselves maybe we'd psyched each other out. Maybe it was some squatter in an old uniform. Maybe the phone had some battery thing, some weird leftover charge. Maybe we didn't see what we thought we saw. Then we opened the footage. The video played back with perfect clarity. Our footsteps, our nervous jokes, the bell ringing on its own, the footprints, the office. You could hear my breathing loud in the mic as I picked up the phone. But on the recording, the voice wasn't just a distorted whisper. It was clear, deep, confident. The tone of a man used to checking people in and out. "Checkout time is over," he said. No static hiding the words. No glitch. It was like someone had leaned directly into the mic and spoken. We all looked at each other, faces drained, but it got worse. Because right after that line, when the dragging starts in the distance and we scramble out of the office, another voice comes in. Same one. Same calm manager tone. Only now he says something else. He says our names. Adil, Danish, Samir, Hina. He says them like he's reading them off a guest list. Hina backed away from the laptop, shaking her head, whispering, "I cut there. I swear I cut right there. I stopped the recording. It shouldn't keep going." But it did. The last frame stayed frozen on the lobby, camera aimed at the bell. The image warped slightly, lines bending like heat waves. For a moment, the reflection on the bell surface stretched, darkened, and took the shape of a tall, distorted figure in a uniform. Then the screen went black. The file corrupted itself as we watched. We tried to show that footage to other people, but every time we moved it to a phone or sent it online, it broke. Audio disappeared. Video glitched. On one attempt, all that remained was a still frame of the front desk bell and a single, new audio clip at the end. A man's voice, low and amused, saying, "Management reserves the right to hold guests indefinitely." We never went back to Redwood Pines Motel. Sometimes I wake up at night with the taste of dust and metal in my mouth, convinced I can hear that bell ringing somewhere down the hallway outside my apartment door. And every now and then, my phone lights up with a notification. Unknown number calling. No voicemail, just silence. I don't answer anymore, but I know if I ever did what I'd hear. Checkout time is over. I still don't know if I ever really left that room. My name's Imran. I'm not some ghost hunter or thrill chaser. I work IT support for a logistics company. I complain about deadlines. I microwave the same leftovers 3 days in a row. If you'd met me a year ago, you'd probably forget me 10 minutes later. But I remember everything about that night like it's still happening. It was Halloween. Not that it mattered to me. I wasn't headed to a party or anything. I was driving back home from a long, miserable work trip, the kind where your back hurts from cheap chairs and your brain buzzes from too many PowerPoint slides. It was already late when I left the city. The sky was this low, heavy gray, promising rain that never came. As I got deeper into the countryside, the road narrowed, trees closed in, and fog started crawling up from the ditches, thick and low, wrapping the car in this soft, suffocating white. I remember glancing at the dashboard and feeling my stomach drop. The temperature gauge wasn't just high, it was almost in the red. A few seconds later, the car made this choking, grinding sound and the engine light popped on. "Come on, not now," I muttered, patting the steering wheel like it was a sick pet. The heater died first. Then the power dipped. I coasted the car onto the shoulder as steam hissed out from under the hood, disappearing into the fog. When I stepped out, the cold slapped me hard. It wasn't just chilly. It cut straight through my hoodie like it wasn't even there. The air smelled wet and metallic, like cold iron and damp leaves. I popped the hood and a wave of steam rolled over me, warm and sour, carrying the sharp scent of overheated coolant. I don't know how long I stood there pretending I had any idea what I was looking at. The engine looked like an organ from a body I didn't understand. No other cars passed. The road behind me vanished into white, and the road ahead was just as blank. That's when I saw the sign through the fog. At first I thought it was another hallucination caused by stress. A rectangle of darkness with pale letters barely hanging on. Ridgeview Motel. One of the letters was missing. Another hung crooked by a single bolt. Below it, a smaller sign so faded I could only make out open under a layer of grime. The motel squatted a little ways off the road like a dead animal. 2 levels, paint peeling in long, curling strips, windows boarded or smashed. Weeds sprouted through cracks in the lot, some up to my knees. The metal railings upstairs were rusted to the color of dried blood. It looked like no one had been there in decades. But my car wasn't moving, my phone had 1 bar and no data, and the fog was only getting thicker. The motel might at least have a landline. Shelter. Something. Just ask for help. I told myself. Get inside. Find a phone. You don't have to stay. The gravel crunched under my shoes as I crossed the lot. Every step made this gritty, hollow sound that echoed way too much in the empty air. No bugs, no wind, nothing. Just my own footsteps and the distant ticking of my cooling engine. That was the part that started to bother me. Silence shouldn't echo. As I got closer, I saw the office first. A glass door spiderwebbed with cracks, a faded welcome mat curled at the corners. To the right of it, the rooms lined up in a row, each door closed, some with numbers hanging sideways, some missing entirely. Except for one. Room 12. This door was half open. Not blown open by the wind or rotted off its hinges. Just half open, like someone had stepped out for a moment and was coming right back. Maybe someone really lives here, I muttered. Caretaker, squatter, whatever. I should have gone to the office and knocked. That would have been normal, logical. Instead, my eyes kept going back to that door, hanging just enough that I could see a thin strip of darkness inside, like the room was breathing. Before I fully realized what I was doing, my feet had turned toward it. The fog swirled around my legs, damp and cold, whispering against my jeans like fingers brushing my skin. The closer I got, the warmer the air felt. By the time I reached room 12, the cold had faded into this soft, suffocating warmth, like stepping into a room where someone's been sleeping all night with the heater on too high. The smell changed too. Out in the lot, it was wet dirt and rust. At the door, it was dust mixed with something sweet and stale. Old perfume, cigarette smoke baked into curtains. A faint, sour undercurrent of sweat. I pushed the door gently with my fingertips. It swung inward without a sound. Inside, the room was lit by a single lamp on the nightstand. The light was yellow and weak, but it was enough to paint everything in this sick, cozy glow. The bedspread was faded, patterned with little brown leaves. The carpet near the door was worn down to threads. Dust motes floated in the air, drifting through the light like slow snow. Felt lived in. Not recently, maybe, but not abandoned either. The air was warm, too warm for a building that looked dead from the outside. I could feel it on my face, slightly damp, making the back of my neck itch. "Hello," I called, my voice sounding wrong in the small space. Too loud, too thin. Silence answered. On the little desk near the window, next to an old, boxy TV, something lay open. A guest book. Of course it was a guest book. Of course. I stepped inside, the carpet sinking softly under my shoes. It was like stepping onto a sponge that never quite bounced back. The smell of dust thickened, coating my tongue, making me want to cough. The guest book's pages were yellowed and brittle around the edges, but the ink on some names was still dark. Check-in dates from the 80s, early 90s. Couples, salesmen, families on road trips. Then, near the bottom of the last filled page, there was an entry that didn't match. The handwriting was shaky, uneven, but the ink looked fresh. The letters still had that wet shine to them, like they'd been written minutes ago. Checked in tonight, never checked out. No name, just that sentence sitting there like a dare. A chill crawled slowly up my spine, cutting through the warmth. I swallowed and flipped the page, more to prove to myself that it was just old ink, that my brain was exaggerating. The next page had only one entry. My name, written in my handwriting. Same looping I. Same lazy curve in the R. Same last name I sign on every form without thinking. The date below it was today's date. Halloween. I stared at it so long my eyes started to water. My signature looked deliberate, like I'd taken my time. No tremble, no rush. "What the hell?" I whispered. My fingers shook as I reached for the page like I could somehow feel the truth in the ink. The paper was rough and dry under my skin, crackling slightly when I pressed. Behind me, something creaked. Not a random settling sound. Not the building shifting. The specific, unmistakable complaint of a floorboard taking weight. I spun around so fast the room blurred. No one was there. The air pressed in around me, hot and thick. My own breathing sounded too loud, too close. I could hear the tiny electric buzz of the lamp, the faint hum of something deep in the walls. Then the bed springs groaned. They didn't squeak randomly like they were cooling down. They sank. Slow, like someone heavy was lowering themselves onto the mattress. The center of the bed dipped, the patterned blanket pulling tight toward an invisible weight. I watched it happen, my throat locked, heart scraping up my ribs. "Who's there?" I choked out. No answer. Somewhere in the bathroom, the sink began to drip. A sharp, hollow sound. Tap, tap, tap. Except I'd seen the pipes under the motel from the outside. They were disconnected, hanging uselessly against the foundation. There was no water. My eyes darted to the TV just as it clicked on by itself. The screen flared to life with a blast of static, bright white snow hissing and crackling in the quiet room. The sound clawed at my nerves, too loud for a volume I hadn't set. At first it was just noise and chaos, but then the static shifted. Lines bent. Shapes began to emerge, like someone trying to push through a fogged window from the other side. The haze darkened in the middle, forming a taller, darker blotch, shoulders, a head, a silhouette. It looked like someone standing in the exact spot where I was, in front of the desk. No features, just a human shape, same height, same tilt of the head. It raised an arm. On my skin, I felt the ghost of a touch brush my sleeve. I stumbled back, hitting the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped again under me, like I'd sat on top of someone already lying there. The springs whined in protest, and something beneath the blanket felt wrong. Soft in some places, unnaturally hard in others, like bone pressed under fabric. I jerked away, scrambling to my feet, adrenaline flooding my veins so fast my hands tingled. "Enough!" I gasped. "I'm done. I'm done. I'm leaving." I grabbed my phone from my pocket. The screen refused to light up. Dead, even though I knew it had at least 60% before I walked in. Somewhere behind me, the floorboard creaked again, closer this time. The air shifted. A stir of heat brushed the back of my neck like breath. I didn't look back. I bolted for the door. The second my hand closed on the knob, it slammed shut. Not gently, not like a gust of wind. It flew forward from the inside, yanking away from me so hard my palm burned against the metal. The sound echoed through the motel like a gunshot. I pulled. It didn't budge. The heat ratcheted up, sweat breaking out along my spine. The room felt smaller, like the walls were inching closer. The static on the TV rose in pitch, whining, shrieking. Then suddenly it cut off. Silence dropped again. The door clicked, just once, like a lock turning itself. I tried the knob. This time it opened easily. I didn't question it. I ran. The air in the lot was freezing compared to inside, knifing against my damp skin. I sucked it in greedily as my shoes slipped on loose gravel. Each breath burned my lungs, but it felt clean compared to the thick, used air of room 12. I sprinted toward my car, my vision tunneling around the shape of it. The fog swirled more violently now, coiling around my legs as if something was grabbing at my ankles, trying to slow me down. I yanked open the door and threw myself inside, slamming the lock down even though I knew how ridiculous that was. My hands shook as I turned the key. The engine coughed, sputtered, then roared to life like nothing had ever been wrong. No overheat light, no warning signs. The temperature gauge sat perfectly normal. I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, heart trying to punch out of my throat. For a second, I just sat there, forcing air in and out of my lungs, telling myself to just drive, just go, don't look. I looked. I couldn't stop myself. It was like something in the back of my head whispered, just one more glance. Just see. Room 12's light was on. I could see it clearly now through the fog, glowing warm and yellow behind the curtain. The door was closed, but the shape of the window was a bright rectangle overlooking the lot. A figure stood there, not pressed up against the glass, not waving, just standing inside the room, exactly where the TV and desk were. It was tall, same height as me. For a split second, the fog thinned, and I could see more. It wasn't just someone standing near the window. It was someone standing in front of the desk, one hand resting on an open guest book. My guest book. The figure tilted its head slowly, like it was examining something under glass. Then the room light flickered. Once, twice. On the third flicker, the figure moved closer to the window. What I saw in that brief flash wasn't a stranger. It was me, or something that wore my shape wrong. Same jacket, same messy hair, same tilt of the shoulders. But the face was blurred, smeared, like someone had dragged their fingers through wet paint where the features should be. Where the eyes should be, dark pits seemed to glisten, reflecting the parking lot, reflecting my car. My own double stared back at me from room 12, head slightly tilted, hands still resting on the guest book. The lights went out. The room vanished into darkness, leaving only my headlights and the white churn of fog. I shoved the car into gear and drove. I didn't care that the road was narrow, that visibility was garbage. I just needed distance. Each second that passed without the engine dying felt like a gift. The motel disappeared behind me, swallowed whole by the night. Eventually, the fog thinned. Streetlights reappeared. My phone screen lit up again as if nothing had happened. Battery, 61%. I made it home. I showered 3 times that night and sat awake until dawn, telling myself it was exhaustion, a breakdown, some kind of stress-induced hallucination. I almost believed it, until the next morning. I woke up to a notification on my phone. New photo added to your gallery. I opened it. It wasn't a photo I'd taken. It was a grainy, low-res image of room 12's interior. Same lamp, same bedspread, same TV. The picture was taken from the doorway, just inside, pointed toward the desk. On the desk sat the guest book, open. Zooming in made the picture blur even more, but I could still make out the writing on the current page. The latest entry. My name. Underneath it, in that same shaky, fresh ink I'd seen last night, a new line had been added. Checked in. Still waiting to check out. There was no timestamp, no metadata. The phone insisted the picture didn't exist until that morning. It's been months since Halloween. Sometimes, when everything's quiet in my apartment, I hear a faint electric hiss, like distant static, even when the TV is off. Sometimes I swear the air gets warm, too warm, and the room feels just a little too small. And twice now, twice. I've woken up in the middle of the night to find my shoes by the front door wet with mud and dust on my hands. On my worst nights, when I close my eyes, I see a guest book on a desk somewhere in the dark, its pages turning by themselves, stopping on my name, ink still drying. Maybe I drove away that night. Maybe my body did. But I can't shake the feeling that some part of me is still standing in room 12. One hand resting on the desk, watching headlights come and go through a fogged-up window, waiting for the next signature. Because Ridgeview Motel might be abandoned. But room 12 still checks in. I used to think I was the kind of person who couldn't be scared by anything that didn't have a pulse. Serial killers? Terrifying. Home invasions? Horrifying. But ghosts? Cursed places? Things knocking from inside walls? That was movie stuff. It happened to characters. Not to guys like me who spent their days fixing printers and replacing router passwords. My name's Horace. I'm 26. And the only reason I spent Halloween night in the Milford Motel was because I couldn't back down from a dare in front of my friends. Milford sits off an old highway that nobody really uses anymore. Before the city built the bypass, the motel was busy. Truckers, families, people passing through. Then one winter there was a fire in one of the rooms. The story got weird after that. Rumors about someone going missing, about a guest who checked in and never checked out, about a room they boarded up quietly and pretended had never existed. The motel never recovered. Reviews tanked. People started calling it that place where the guy disappeared. Eventually they closed it, pulled the sign down, and let it rot. For everyone else, it became a thing you pointed at through your car window. For my friend group, it became a test. We joked about it for years. One of these Halloweens, we'll send someone in there for the night. It was always a someday thing, a hypothetical. This year, after too many drinks and too much false bravado, someday became now. We were parked just off the cracked driveway when Bilal turned to me in the back seat. Phone already recording. Come on, Horace. One night. You stay there till sunrise, we each send you 50 grand. That's more than your monthly salary for just trying not to pee yourself in an old room. Zara laughed from the front passenger seat. If he runs out early, no money. He has to at least last till, 3 a.m.? Midnight to 3, Amir said. Witching hours. Perfect. I almost said no. I almost made a joke and changed the subject. But there's something about 3 pairs of eyes watching you in the glow of a phone screen that makes your ego sit up straight. Fine, I heard myself say. 1 room, 1 night. You guys wait here. If I come running out in like 5 minutes, we pretend this never happened and you can roast me forever. They all cheered like idiots. The sound felt small against the flat, heavy dark around us. I grabbed my backpack, water, flashlight, power bank, a hoodie, my stupid bravado, and stepped out of the car. The air outside was colder than it had any right to be in late October. Not a sharp, clean cold. A damp, creeping chill that slid under my jacket and settled between my shoulder blades. The sky was low and cloudy. No moon, just an orange haze from distant streetlights bleeding into the clouds. The motel crouched ahead, a long shape of broken windows and peeling paint. Most of the glass was gone, jagged edges still clinging to frames like broken teeth. The once white doors were stained gray-brown, numbers rusted or missing entirely. Milford had been dead for years, and it looked it. I walked up the path, gravel crunching under my sneakers. The car's headlights faded behind me. Without them, the world fell into deep shadow except for the narrow beam of my flashlight. The lobby door hung open at a crooked angle. I stepped through it, and the smell hit me. Dust, old smoke, wet plaster. Underneath was a faint sour note, like something organic had rotted here a long time ago and never completely left. The lobby was stripped. No chairs, no coffee machine, just the ghost outlines of where furniture had stood, discolored patches on the wall where pictures had once hung. The reception counter had been ripped apart, drawers scattered on the floor, cash register missing its guts. The silence pressed on my ears, so complete it made the little noises my shoes made sound wrong. I could almost hear my own heartbeat. Still time to go back, my brain whispered. Instead, I walked past the lobby into the main hallway. The rooms stretched out on both sides, doors half open like mouths mid-sentence. I shone my light on the numbers until I found one I could actually read. Room 7. I counted down the doors. 8. The one after that was hanging off its hinges. The next had a crooked metal plate still clinging to it. The door was closed. The knob was tarnished, flecked with rust. My fingers tightened around the flashlight until they ached. Of course it's 9, I muttered. The others had joked about room 9 on the drive. 9 lives, 9 circles of hell. It had become a running thing. Maybe that's why I picked it. Maybe part of me wanted the story to line up neatly. I turned the knob. It moved more easily than I expected. The door swung inward with a dull groan. The smell inside was heavier. Dust and damp plaster, yes, but also that old motel mix. Cheap air freshener long since died out but still clinging in the walls. Cigarette smoke baked into fabric, faint mildew. My flashlight swept across the room. Wallpaper peeled down in long sheets, stained and bloated from old leaks. The carpet was a graveyard of dark patches and unknown spills. The curtains hung in tatters, threads dangling like cobwebs. The bathroom door stood half ajar, mirror inside catching my light and throwing it back in a warped blur. The bed dominated the center of the room. The mattress was yellowed, springs exposed in places. The sheets were more gray than white and stiff with dust. Some of it puffed into the air when my light hit, a slow swirl of particles that made my nose itch. I dropped my backpack near the wall and sat on the mattress, testing my weight. I groaned but held. Dust puffed up around me, coating the air with that dry, dead smell. My friends had wanted me to live stream it, but of course there was no signal. I recorded some video instead, panning around, making dumb commentary to keep myself from thinking too hard. So, yeah, we're in lovely Milford Motel. 5-star accommodations, seasonal mold, possibly haunted by poor management. The sound of my own voice almost made it worse. It sounded too loud and too small at the same time. Time stretched. Minutes blurred into each other. I checked my phone. 11:42. I scrolled through old messages, watched part of a downloaded video, lay back and stared at the cracked ceiling. The building creaked occasionally. A pop in the wall, a groan in the pipes. Normal old structure noises. My brain cataloged them rationally. Then, sometime after midnight, a sound came from behind my headboard that my brain couldn't categorize. 3 slow taps on the wall. Right behind me. I sat up so fast the mattress complained. Dust flew, making me cough. I swallowed, listening. Tap, tap, tap. They weren't random creaks. They were deliberate. Knuckles on plaster. Slow, evenly spaced. My skin prickled. The hairs on my arms stood up, a cold wave rushing over my scalp down my neck. Old pipes? I whispered to myself. Or something shifting. Or rats. Big rats. There was no plumbing in that wall. The bathroom was on the other side of the room. I knew that. I'd already checked the floor plan in my head. Past that wall was supposed to be a narrow storage space, then the outer wall of the building. No adjoining room. No one sitting in a chair knocking as a joke. The fear curled tight in my stomach. It made me feel stupid and small. And then, because I am who I am, something stubborn in me rose up. Real mature, I said, voice shaky. Haha, very funny haunting. I raised my hand and knocked back. 3 quick taps, like I was joining in the joke. The silence that followed was so deep it felt like the whole world was holding its breath. Then the wall answered. 5 taps. Faster. Harder. Knuckles hitting the plaster with more force, like whoever or whatever was inside was less amused. The sound punched straight through my chest. Something in the back of my mind started screaming. Not words, just raw alarm. There was no one there. There couldn't be anyone there. I stayed very, very still. My pulse thudded in my throat so loud it was almost another sound in the room. The air got thicker, heavier, like the room had suddenly filled with steam, except the temperature didn't rise. If anything, it dropped. A cold, damp chill seeped through my shirt, into my spine. Who's there? I forced out. The wall thudded once, hard enough that dust shook free from a crack above the headboard. Then the tapping started again. Not slow anymore. Angry. It rushed into a frantic rhythm, hard, fast pounding from inside the wall. The plaster vibrated. Tiny flakes rained down onto the mattress. The sound crawled under my skin like a swarm of insects. I stumbled off the bed, dragging it a few inches away from the wall without even realizing I was doing it. My flashlight beam jittered wildly, slicing across the buckling wallpaper. A hairline crack above the bed widened with a soft, tearing sound. Another formed below it, jagged, crooked. Let me out. The voice came from inside the wall. Not muffled like someone shouting through insulation. Not echoing down pipes. It was right there, inches beyond the plaster. Deep, wet-sounding like each syllable had to push through something thick to escape. Let me out. The words rolled over my skin in a wave of ice. My knees felt weak. My mouth went dry. I could smell something now, not just dust and mold. Something sour and sweet at the same time, like meat that had been left out too long. The crack split further. The wall bulged. It pushed inward in a slow, obscene swell, plaster distorting as if something massive was leaning against it from the other side. The bulge moved, up, down, sideways, like someone shifting their weight, pressing hands, shoulders, face into the barrier between us. I fumbled for my backpack, my fingers numb. The voice whispered again, closer, vibrating through the air, through my bones. Let me out. You knocked. That last word came out like a cough, wet and broken. Something pressed against the crack. For a second, the plaster flexed, and I saw the faint, horrible impression of fingers. Too long, too thin, pushing through, straining. That snapped whatever was left of my courage. I grabbed my bag and ran. The door felt like it took 100 years to open. My feet slipped on the hallway dust as I bolted, lungs burning. Heart a drum trying to break free from my ribcage. Behind me, the pounding on the wall didn't stop. It chased me into the hall, thuds and cracks and that impossible voice, words dissolving into a low, furious roar. I sprinted past room 876. The corridor stretched, seemed longer than before. My vision tunneled. The exit sign at the end glowed weakly, a sickly green target. Then the doors started slamming. Room 2's door swung shut with a thundercrack, the sound echoing through the hallway. I flinched involuntarily. Room 3's door snapped closed, hard enough that flakes of paint fluttered down in its wake. Room 4. Each door slammed in sequence as I passed, like some invisible force was chasing me down the hall, sealing each room as it went, locking something in or out room by room. The air shuddered with each impact. My chest felt tight, like I was running underwater. The smell followed me, thick and rotten. Room 7 slammed just as I rushed past. The gust of air from it nearly knocked me sideways. Room 8. I could see the front door now. The outside. The night. Room 9. That one was different. The sound was deeper, heavier. It didn't just slam. It crashed, the whole frame rattling, dust exploding from the jam. The floor trembled under my shoes. a low vibration that buzzed up through my legs. For a terrifying heartbeat, the motel seemed to hold its breath again. Then the roar from behind the walls cut abruptly off, like someone had put a lid back on whatever was pushing to get through. I didn't stop to think. I burst out of the motel into the cold night, the fresh air hitting me so hard I almost vomited. My legs carried me across the lot to the car without asking my permission. My friends saw my face and knew. The laughter died instantly. They scrambled to unlock the doors from the inside as I yanked at the handle. "Drive," I said, voice raw. "Just drive." We didn't argue. Tires squealed, gravel spat, and Milford Motel shrank in the rearview mirror, a dark tooth in the night. No one spoke the entire way home. I didn't tell them about the voice, or the fingers in the wall. I barely believed it myself. They thought it was just the atmosphere that got to me. Old building, spooky stories, sleep deprivation. I almost let myself believe that, too, until 3 nights later, when I woke up in my own bed at 3:07 a.m. to the sound of someone knocking on the wall behind my headboard. 3 slow taps, the wall that faces my closet, the wall that doesn't connect to another apartment, just the building's maintenance crawl space. I held my breath, every nerve on fire. The knocking stopped. Silence. Then, from somewhere inside the wall, closer than breathing, "Let me out." The plaster above my head made a soft, stretching sound, like something pushing from the other side. I used to laugh at the way older people talk about the 70s, like it was some golden haze of bell-bottoms, cheap gas, and simpler dangers. They forget to mention the stuff that never made it into the history books, the little local stories that never left a few blocks or one road or one ugly, low-built motel on the edge of town. The Sunrise Motel was one of those stories. My name's Faison. My cousin Ollie and I grew up in a town where nothing exciting ever happened unless you counted new speed bumps or a different fried chicken place opening. The biggest urban legend we had was the Sunrise Motel, out on Route 11, closed since some murder in the late 70s. Our parents all knew the story. They just didn't agree on the details. In some versions, it was a couple that argued and didn't both walk out. In others, it was a traveling salesman who disappeared and left too much blood behind. There was always a shower curtain. There was always a bathroom. There was always a room on the second floor you didn't talk about. And there was always the same ending. The motel shut down. New owners never stuck. It sat out there with its dead neon sign and peeling paint, watching the highway get busier without it. People warned us not to go. So, of course, we went. It was Ali's idea to do it on Halloween. "We'll just look around," he said, grinning at me over the hood of his ancient Corolla as the sun slid down behind the trees. "Daytime is boring. Night has ambience. That's one word for it," I muttered. "What's the plan exactly? Film a TikTok? Summon a ghost?" "Neither. We go in, we look, we leave. You get to say you've been in the murder motel. I get to say I didn't raise a coward for a cousin." He was only 3 months older than me, but liked to talk like he'd seen the world. We got there around 11:30 p.m., when the sky had gone from orange to deep, starless black. The Sunrise Motel crouched at the edge of the road like a badly healed scar. 2 levels of rooms, faded yellow paint scabbed off in patches, balcony railings rusting away. The sign out front had lost most of its letters. Sunrise was just SRSE. The rest long gone. The word motel was barely readable. No lights, no cars. Just our headlights sweeping over cracked parking spaces with grass punching through the asphalt. I killed the engine and the world went very, very quiet. The air was colder out here, the kind of damp chill that clung to your clothes. It smelled faintly of wet concrete and something older. Stale cigarette smoke and mildew. A motel's last breath trapped in its own lungs. "You sure there's no security?" I asked. Ali snorted. "There's barely a roof. Come on." We hopped the short, rusted chain someone had lazily stretched across the driveway. Gravel crunched under our sneakers as we crossed the lot. The sound echoed strangely. There was no traffic hum, no wind in the trees, just the brittle noise of our footsteps and our own breathing. The lobby door was glass once. Now it was mostly empty frame, shards hanging stubbornly from the corners. We stepped through and into the stale dark. My flashlight beam carved out a small, wobbly circle in front of us. The lobby looked like it had been emptied in a hurry. A reception desk sat bare against the back wall, drawers pulled out and left hanging. Dust lay thick on every surface, disturbed only by the occasional trail of some small animal. Faded travel posters curled on the walls, half peeled away. A plastic plant in the corner had given up pretending and sagged into itself, leaves gray with dust. "Cozy," Ollie said. His voice bounced off the bare walls and came back thinner. We moved deeper in, past the lobby and into the main hallway. The carpet here, once probably red, was a dead brown, stained and stiff. Doors lined the walls on both sides, their gold numbers tarnished. "Room 22 is upstairs," Ollie said. "That was the one, right? According to your creepy Google deep dive, yeah." He'd sent me screenshots earlier, old newspaper scans, mentions of an altercation in room 22, blood evidence, no signs of forced entry, no names, no photos, just enough detail to give the place a reputation it never shook. We found the stairs at the end of the hall. The metal handrail was cold, sticky with grime. Each step creaked under us in a protest that sounded too human. The second floor hallway felt tighter. The ceiling seemed lower, the walls closer. My flashlight picked up patterned wallpaper, the kind with little flowers now bubbled and peeling. The air smelled strongly of dust and something faintly metallic, like old coins rubbed between fingers. We counted doors. The number hung slightly crooked, one screw missing. The door was closed but not locked. The knob turned under my hand with a sticky, reluctant groan. "Ready?" Ollie asked. "Nope," I said, and pushed the door open anyway. Room 22 looked like every cheap motel room that's ever existed, run through 40 years of neglect. Double bed sagging in the middle, nightstand with one missing drawer, ugly landscape painting tilted over the headboard. The carpet had dark circular stains near the bed's foot that I chose not to analyze. The curtains over the window were drawn. Some light from the parking lot's lone street lamp seeped in around the edges, just enough to give everything a murky outline. The bathroom door stood to the left, half closed. Ollie swept his flashlight around and gave a low whistle. "We should have brought a black light," he murmured. "Or maybe not. Please never say black light in an abandoned murder room again." We walked in. The air was a little warmer here, like it had been holding on to daytime heat, but it had a slightly humid closeness to it, like a bathroom after a long shower. I could hear something faint, a drip somewhere, a soft, intermittent tap. "Probably a leak," I said, mostly to myself. The beam of my flashlight slid over the bathroom door as I put my bag down. The gap at the bottom was a thin strip of darkness. That was when the bathroom light flicked on. The doorframe glowed, harsh yellow-white pouring out around the edges. It was the kind of light you only get from cheap fluorescent bulbs, the ones that buzz faintly and make your skin look sick. Ollie and I both flinched, turning our heads at the same time. The light switch, as far as I could see through the half-open door, was inside the bathroom. I could just make out part of the mirror, grimy and streaked. The shower curtain was drawn fully across the tub, cutting off the back wall. "You saw that, right?" Ollie said. "Yeah." "Old wiring?" he offered. I wanted to believe that. We both did. That's the safe explanation you cling to like a life jacket. "Sure," I said. "Short circuit. Whatever." The light went off. The bathroom dropped back into darkness. The rectangle of the door just a blacker patch in the room. Ollie forced a laugh. "See? Probably a loose." The light flicked on again. Off, on, off. Each time it came on, the buzzing hum of the bulb scratched at my nerves. Each time it went dark, the silence snapped back like elastic. This time, the light stayed, and we saw it. Behind the thin, plasticky shower curtain, a shape stood, a silhouette, human-sized, facing our direction. It wasn't detailed, just the solid, unmistakable outline of someone standing in the tub. Head, shoulders, arms hanging at the sides. Still, the curtain clung to it slightly at one side, as if caught on a shoulder or an elbow. My mouth went dry. The room suddenly felt too small, the air thick, like my lungs were working harder for each breath. "You seeing this?" Ali whispered. "Yeah," I breathed. "Could be a trick of the light. Something hanging back there." "Aha, you go check." Then, we stared. The silhouette did not move. The buzzing light seemed louder now, pulsing under my skin. "Let's just back out," I said through clenched teeth. Slowly, we moved together, taking small steps backward toward the door. My flashlight beam shook, jittering over the bed and the worn carpet, but my eyes kept snapping back to the bathroom. The light went out. The room fell into darkness again, my flashlight the only source. But the shape didn't vanish. It stepped out. I don't know how else to describe it. It was like the darkness inside the bathroom thickened and poured forward in a human shape. Same outline, same impossible solidity, now no longer confined by plastic and light. It was visible even in the dark. A patch of black deeper than the rest of the room, absorbing my flashlight instead of being lit by it. Wherever I pointed the beam, the edges of the figure stayed weirdly sharp, like it was standing in front of the light, casting no shadow of its own. One step, then another. Its feet made no sound on the tile, no creak on the carpet. It just moved, a displacement in the air. The smell in the room changed. Under the dust and mildew, a hint of old coppery tang, like dried blood and stale water. "Out," Ali said, voice barely recognizable. We didn't argue. We bolted for the door. The hallway outside seemed to explode into life in response. As soon as we hit the threshold, the light over room 22's door flicked on with a sharp electric snap. Then the light over the next room. Then the next. One by one, fluorescent fixtures along the hallway ceiling turned on, popping into harsh life in a chain that stretched toward the lobby. Each one buzzed, flickered once, then held, like they were waking up on command. The effect was insane. The dead motel, seconds ago a dark, rotting shell, now had a glowing spine of light leading straight ahead. Is it guiding us?" Ali gasped as we ran. "I don't care, we're following it." The carpet blurred under my feet, my legs burning. Every breath scraped the back of my throat. The lights ahead of us clicked on just before we reached them. The ones behind us didn't go out, but it felt like the darkness was catching up anyway. I risked a glance back. The hallway behind us was empty. No figure, no curtain thing crawling after us. But for a fraction of a second, I thought I saw a darker patch standing just inside the doorway of room 22, watching. We tore down the stairs, my hands sliding on the grimy rail. The lobby lights flicked on as we burst into it, buzzing and flickering. The front door, which had seemed so gray and dead on our way in, now gleamed with the reflection of our flashlight beams and the ceiling lights. We didn't stop until we were outside, the cold slapping our faces. Gravel kicked up behind us as we sprinted to the car. The air out here tasted clean and sharp after the thick, used air inside. Ali's hands shook so badly, he dropped the keys twice before jamming them into the lock. I kept my eyes on the motel, chest heaving. Most of it was still dark, just a broken shape against the night. Except for one room. On the second floor, third door from the end, a bathroom window glowed. Room 22. The light was on again. I could see it clearly from here now, a bright rectangle behind the glass. The curtain inside was pulled all the way open, no shower silhouette, no figure, just tile. "Look," Ali said, pointing with a shaking finger. We watched. The light flickered once, twice, then steadied. Something moved on the far wall. Dark marks, smears. They were handprints, bloody ones, or something close enough in color that my brain didn't bother to split hairs. Pale tile, red-brown hands. Not neat, spaced-out forensic textbook prints. These were dragged, overlapping, fingers clawing downward. Some pressed in so hard the shape of knuckles and palms were clear even from across the lot. They hadn't been there when we went in. I knew that with the kind of certainty that roots itself in your bones. The light blinked off. The window went dark. We drove in silence all the way back to town, our faces reflected in the windshield, two pale, wide-eyed figures lit by passing street lamps. We didn't tell anyone the full story. We said it was creepy, that it smelled bad, that we got spooked by raccoons or the building shifting. Nobody pushed too hard. Our parents were just happy we came back at all. I tried to move on. Then, a week later, I was brushing my teeth in my own bathroom when the light flicked off by itself. I froze, toothbrush halfway to my mouth. The air felt suddenly colder, tight against my skin. The light flicked on. My bathroom doesn't have wiring issues. The switch didn't move. In the mirror, for just a heartbeat, I thought I saw something behind the shower curtain. A darker patch in the pattern. The suggestion of shoulders. When I yanked the curtain open, there was nothing but white tile and shampoo bottles. No blood. No prints. Not there. But later that night, I woke up thirsty and went to the kitchen. As I passed the bathroom, I saw it out of the corner of my eye. In the faint glow from the hallway, just above the tub, faint and smeared, for reddish streaks, like fingers trying to hold on. The next morning, they were gone. Or at least my parents didn't see them, and they used that bathroom more than I do. Maybe it was my imagination. Maybe the light in my head was the one flickering. But every time I flip that switch now, I hold my breath for a second, waiting, because I can't stop thinking about how those hall lights came on for us. How they turned what should have been a trap into a lit path. Like something was helping, or hurting. Like Sunrise Motel wasn't done practicing. And somewhere, in a room that hasn't seen a paying guest since the 70s, a bathroom light keeps turning on and off, waiting for the next idiot who decides that abandoned places are just empty buildings. I always thought the scariest thing about roadside motels was the carpet. Not the ghost. Not the murders people whisper about decades later. The carpet. That weird, patterned, never quite clean rug that you can't look at too closely without imagining all the things that have soaked into it. That was what I expected when I went into room 4 at the Clearwater Motel on Halloween. Stains. Dust. Maybe a rat. I wasn't ready for a radio that remembered voices. My name's Denial. I'm a freelance photographer, which is the romantic way of saying I drive a lot, sleep badly, and take pictures of anything people will pay for. Old buildings, product shots, even weddings if the rent's due. Clearwater started as a side project, Rust and Ruin, a photo series of abandoned places along forgotten highways. I'd shoot them, post them online with moody captions, and pretend I wasn't hoping some gallery would notice. The Clearwater Motel was the crown jewel of that little obsession. Everyone around here knew the story. In the late 80s, a couple checked into room 4 on Halloween night and never checked out. Their car was still in the lot. Their luggage was still inside. No signs of struggle, no blood, no forced entry. They just disappeared. The motel limped along for a few years after that, but it never shook the rumor. Business dried up. The owner died. Eventually, they locked the doors and walked away. For 30 years, room 4 only existed in campfire stories and drunk retellings. Until I unlocked it. The evening I drove out there, the sky was already sliding from blue to bruised purple. The Clearwater Motel crouched off the 2-lane road like a long, low animal. Its sign leaning, its paint peeling away in strips. Weeds choked the parking lot, pushing through cracked asphalt like veins. I parked near the lobby, killed the engine, and sat for a second, listening. No traffic, no wind, just that thick, dead quiet you only get far from other people. The air outside was colder than in town. It had that damp, end-of-October bite, smelling faintly of wet dirt and old leaves. The motel's own smell seeped into it as I got closer, stale cigarette smoke, mildew, that faint sour odor of old plumbing. The front office door had been forced open years ago. Glass crunched under my boots as I stepped inside. The reception desk was still there. A plastic bell knocked onto the floor, yellowed brochures scattered near the wall. I snapped a few shots in the fading light. Dust caught the flash like ash suspended in water. My breath puffed in front of me, briefly visible in the cold, then gone. To the left, a hallway led to the rooms. Numbers mostly intact. 1, 2, 3. Room 4 was halfway down. Door warped but closed. Someone had spray-painted a crude skull over the number at some point. The black drips dried hard like tears. The lock had long since given up. A little pressure and a shoulder, and the door jerked inward with a groan. The smell hit first. Not rot, not fresh, at least. It was layers of old scents fighting for dominance. Smoke, cheap cologne, mold, the faint ghost of cleaning chemicals from a lifetime ago. Under all of it was something metallic and sour that made my tongue feel coated. I lifted my camera and took a test shot. The flash sketched out the room in harsh white for a split second. Bed sagging in the middle, brown patterned bedspread stiff with dust. One nightstand, one lamp, both listing slightly. A chair in the corner with torn upholstery. Curtain half drawn over a window that looked onto the dark parking lot. And on the nightstand, next to the lamp, an old radio. The kind with a heavy plastic body and a big silver dial, the kind your grandparents stuck on kitchen counters. Its antenna was half extended, bent at an awkward angle. The front speaker was covered in a thin layer of grime. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years. I set my camera bag down and did a slow circuit of the room, shooting details, the cracked mirror, the warped door to the bathroom, the cigarette burns on the table. Each flash felt louder than the last, shattering the gloom into pieces. As my eyes adjusted between shots, the room seemed to breathe around me. The air felt thicker near the ceiling, like heat trapped up there, though the room itself was almost uncomfortably cold. I sat on the edge of the bed to check my screen. The mattress springs complained under my weight, a long, tired creak that made the hairs on my arms stand up. That's when the radio turned on. No click of a power switch, no hand twisting a knob. Just silence, then a sudden rush of sound. Static exploded from the speaker, filling the room with a hiss like 1,000 whispers mashed together. I jumped, almost dropping my camera. The radio's dial was moving. Slowly, jerkily, the big silver knob turned itself, sliding the red marker along the faded numbers. The static shifted pitch as it passed invisible stations. Fleeting snatches of music, half words, then more white noise. My brain grabbed for explanations. A power surge, a loose contact, some timer inside corroding back to life. But there was no power. I'd noticed that earlier. The outlets in the office were dead. The motel had been off the grid for years. My phone's battery was the only electricity I'd brought with me. Still, the radio hummed, alive in the dead room. Okay, I said out loud, because the silence in my head was too full of what-ifs. That's weird. The dial stopped. The static settled into a low, steady hiss. For a moment I thought that was it, that I just stumbled onto some dying echo of stored charge or whatever excuse would let me sleep later. Then, under the static, I heard it. A voice. It was faint, buried deep in the noise. A woman's voice, trembling. The words stretched thin, like they were traveling a long way to reach me. Don't come in. My skin went cold, not like a draft, like someone poured ice water through my veins. I stared at the radio. The speaker crackled. The knob twitched a millimeter to the left, then back, as if something on the other side was adjusting it with shaking fingers. Don't come in, the woman said again, more clearly this time. He's still here. Her voice wasn't a movie ghost voice. It wasn't echoey or demonic. It sounded painfully normal, afraid, desperate. Who's here? I asked before I could stop myself. The static roared, swallowing everything for a second like the radio was furious I'd spoken. Then another voice cut through. Male, low, distorted like it was fighting the speaker. I couldn't make out the words at first, just the tone. Angry, sharp, like someone barking through clenched teeth. Say that again, I whispered. Come on, say. The voice snapped into focus for half a sentence. Told you not to. Then it broke apart again, twisted into harsh, inhuman syllables that scraped at my ears. The door behind me slammed shut. The sound was so sudden, so violent, that I flinched forward. A gust of stale air washed over my back. The room seemed to tilt for a second. I spun around. The door, which I'd left half open, now stood firmly closed. The knob didn't twist or rattle, but I knew if I grabbed it, it wouldn't turn. I didn't test the theory. The radio screamed, not literally, but the static surged into a jagged, piercing squeal as the dial spun faster. The red marker racing back and forth across the band. Caught voices in flashes. Won't let us leave. He's in the room. Don't open the... Each clip was cut off mid-phrase, like someone was smashing the seek button again and again, desperately trying to land on the right plea. He won't let us leave. He won't let us leave. He won't let. The same line repeated, overlapping, different tones, different intensities, smearing over each other. It was like listening to a lifetime of the same fear looped on every station. The air in the room changed. It got heavier, like the pressure dropped. The sound from the radio seemed to come from everywhere now, vibrating in the walls, in the mattress springs, behind my teeth. I took a step toward the nightstand. My hand shook as I reached for the radio, fingers brushing the warm, cracked plastic. "Stop," I said. "Just stop." The knob froze mid-spin. The static dropped to a whisper. For a moment, the only sound was my own breathing, too loud, too fast. Then, in that near silence, both voices came back. Not broken, not distant. Clear. Right there. "Now you're with us." They said it together. The woman's tremble, the man's roughness, braided into one sentence that felt like it slid under my skin and lodged there. The floor seemed to tilt again. My balance went weird. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. Something in me snapped. I grabbed the doorknob. It was cold. Colder than the air. Colder than anything else in that room. For a second it felt like my palm had fused to it, like frostbite in reverse, sharp pain, then numb. I twisted, expecting resistance. Turned. The door flung open so easily I stumbled backward, almost falling. I didn't stop to question it. I ran. Down the hall, past the other doors that watched me with their dark eye holes, down the sagging front steps, across the cracked parking lot. My breath tore at my throat, my legs burning, gravel slipping under my boots. I didn't look back until I was in the car with the engine roaring and my hands locked so tight on the wheel my knuckles ached. The motel sat in my rearview mirror, a dark rectangle against the night. Room 4's window was black. No light, no movement. The radio, I told myself, would be quiet now. Whatever weird leftover power surge had woken it had burned out. The voices were echoes, old emergency calls. My brain had filled in the gaps. I told myself a lot of things on the drive home. My apartment felt wrong when I walked in. Too bright, too quiet. The normal hum of the fridge and the distant buzz of pipes sounded fake, like a bad soundstage. I threw myself into editing the photos, trying to bury the memory under layers of contrast and grain. Cropping, adjusting, pretending. Every time I paused, I heard the woman's voice again. "Don't come in. He's still here." At some point, exhausted, I gave up. I saved my files, shut the laptop, and decided I'd clear my head with a drive. Just aimless, radio on, city lights, noise and people and the comfort of other cars. Night had thickened outside. The air was crisp when I walked back down to the parking lot. My breath came out in white clouds as I unlocked my car and slid behind the wheel. I started the engine. The radio came on automatically, like it always did, volume low, some pop song halfway through. I pulled out onto the road. 2 minutes into the drive, right as I hit the main street, the song cut off mid-chorus. Static flooded the speakers. I frowned, glancing at the dash. The station number flickered like it was losing signal, then steadied. I tapped the seek button. The dial jumped frequencies. The static changed pitch, little burps of music and talk radio popping up, then vanishing. Nothing settled. "Great," I muttered. Antennas screwed. A voice slid through the noise. "Don't come in." My hands went ice cold on the wheel. Traffic lights glowed red ahead, casting oily reflections on the wet asphalt. My car idled as I waited for green. Other drivers sat oblivious around me, faces lit by their own dashboards, wrapped in their own music. In my car, the static narrowed, tuned, like someone was carefully adjusting it from the inside. "Don't come in," the woman whispered again. The speakers hissed with her breath. It sounded like she was leaning in, close to the mic, close to me. My mouth went dry. I reached for the power button, finger hovering. The other voice growled in before I could press it. Male, harsh, too loud. The speakers distorted under the weight of it. Told you not to open it. The sound crackled, splintered. The dashboard lights dimmed for a heartbeat, then flared back to normal. The intersection light turned green. No one honked, even when I didn't move immediately. It felt like the world outside had dropped a few seconds behind. I forced the car forward, brain screaming at me that this was just my imagination layered onto random interference. He won't let us leave, they said. This time it wasn't a loop. It wasn't fragments from different stations. It was both of them, the woman and the man, perfectly synced, right in the center of my car. He won't let us leave. I slammed my palm against the radio's power button. The static stopped. The silence that replaced it was so sudden my ears rang. I drove home on pure autopilot, muscle memory turning the wheel, pressing the pedals. I parked crookedly, hands shaking so hard I had to sit there for a minute before I could trust myself to stand. The engine ticked as it cooled. Outside, the building's yellow stairwell light hummed. My radio was off. I'd hit the button. I'd watched the little screen go dark. Then, in the quiet, just as I reached for the keys to kill the ignition, the speakers whispered, so softly I almost thought I imagined it. Now you're with us. Both voices, together, right behind my ears. The radio's display was still dead. No lights, no numbers. The static, when it rose again, didn't come from the speakers. It seemed to come from the air inside the car itself, from somewhere just behind the dashboard, under the seats, in the vents. Like Clearwater hadn't wanted me to just take pictures. It wanted me to bring something back.